Greetings, gentle viewers. I am George from Ireland, and it's good that you are gentle viewers because it'll be people with gentility who'll appreciate this next video. So this was the house of Sir Edward Burne-Jones for only 2 years. Oh my goodness, there's somebody going in. I don't know if it's a private house or what. So Burne-Jones is best known as an artist of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. He was born in Birmingham in 1833. His father was a frame maker, but only 6 days after his birth, Burne-Jones's mother died. So he was brought up by his father and by a local woman hired as a servant, who wasn't particularly brainy. Was very loving, smothered him with affection, really. But he felt held him back rather, because of her own limitations. But he had, in some ways, a happy childhood. And Birmingham was a burgeoning industrial city at that time, now the second largest city in the United Kingdom, but it must have 100 times fewer tourists than London. I mustn't be rude about our Brummie friends, but I'm afraid Birmingham's got precious little to offer the tourist. Here we are in Kensington Square, in one of the most desirable districts in London. Anyway, Burne-Jones's father did well at what he was working at. Edward Burne-Jones, he went to King Edward VI School, Birmingham, which is thought to be the best school in the city. And why is it called Edward VI? There are a lot of schools around the UK called King Edward School, but which King Edward? There have been 8 of them. It's almost invariably Edward VI. Why? Because the boy king who brought about the religious Reformation, the second Josiah, this was shortly after the dissolution of the monasteries, that he ascended to the throne at the ripe old age of 9, and there was a lacuna in the educational system, so it's also to fill the void by setting up lots of schools. Repton is one of them, I think Shrewsbury's another, can't think of it, but lots of other called King Edward VI. So King Edward School, Birmingham, just normally known as that, King Edward's or KE, they normally don't add the number 6. Anyhow, from there he went to Exeter College, Oxford. He got to know William Morris, who also went to Exeter, and the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was soon founded. So William Holman Hunt, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and his brother, I don't remember the other Rossetti's brother's name, and goodness, who's the other one? John Everett Millais, whose house lies yonder, about a quarter of a mile. And it was in Millais' parents' place on Gower Street that they signed their founding document setting out their 4 principles. Now, I can't quote them in sequence or indeed verbatim, but in sum they were these, that they would produce art to be as superb as it possibly could. They were not preoccupied with popularity or indeed making a mint. They would pay the closest possible attention to the minutiae of nature and try to recreate them as faithfully as possible in their art. Always to produce art that was something of the spirit. It couldn't just be copying someone else's work. It couldn't be learned off by heart. And I'm just trying to think, oh yeah, that it had to impart some sort of message, could be a moral lesson, or it mustn't just simply look aesthetically pleasing. Had to be more profound than that. So that's what they were about, and they were really in all spheres of the plastic arts, and to some extent prose and poetry as well. So, but sculpture, drawing, painting, printmaking. Now Burne-Jones, he went down from Exeter, but he said that at 25 he felt like he was more than 15. He felt that his work was jejune, but he tried to make up for this artistic underdevelopment, and he threw himself into his artistic endeavours. But what he's best known for is reinvigorating the tradition of stained glass in this country, which had stagnated since the Reformation. Seen as being a Catholic thing, he's saying no, it's completely compatible with Anglicanism. I'm pretty sure he was a communicant of the Church of England. He was certainly a Protestant of some sort, otherwise he wouldn't have been allowed into Oxford University. And KE is an Anglican school. They don't have to be an Anglican to go there. These days, there are plenty of Muslims and Hindus there. Anyway, so Burne-Jones, he was commissioned to put stained glass windows into many churches. It was good timing for him because it's the height of the Oxford movement, as in that movement within the Church of England to say that they could revive their Catholic traditions. They still remained Anglicans, they still recognised Queen Victoria as the head of their church, but they could bring back Catholic-style art, having monks and nuns and sacraments, things like that, address their priest as father, so that they thought it was completely compatible with Anglicanism. So Burne-Jones, he moved to London. He lived in Red Lion Square, a few miles to the east, and that house still stands. This one's rather better preserved, this house of 1804. It was badly damaged in the Second World War, but rebuilt quite faithfully. The garden used to be rather larger. They've taken a bit of it for the pavement here, and beside it there's this 1680 house, which Sir John Simon lived in. Not the Liberal Party leader, but the chief officer medical officer of London, at around the same time, in fact. Anyway, so Burne-Jones married. He had, I think just one son, Ned, Georgiana MacDonald, or is it Georgiana? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And she also died shortly after giving birth to that child. So that was a blow he felt very deeply. But he carried on painting, produced oil paintings mainly. He was fascinated by the Middle Ages and the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood they mainly were. And why pre-Raphaelite? They're looking back to before Raphael, this artist of the early 15th century. They want to go back to the 14th century and earlier. They thought that was the age they had to recreate, to revive those artistic traditions, the authenticity, the spirituality that they felt came across in the artistic works of the late medieval era, because they wanted to go back to before the Renaissance. And it was also the height of this rhapsodizing about medievalism, and the tales of King Arthur were very much en vogue, and so he illustrated some of those. He was fascinated with the wizard Merlin. Incidentally, Jones was half Welsh. That's why as Jones is part of his surname. And of course, many of these really relate to Wales. Some Welsh people say that they are the true Britons, that the English are only Anglo-Saxon interlopers. And Merlin is a popular name in Wales to this day. You know, the name of the wizard who appears in the King Arthur legends. So that is Burne-Jones, and then he was only renting this, he never owned it, and then the landlord sold it, given the minimal notice. They had to move to the Grange house in Fulham, which has unfortunately since been demolished. So he obviously was very wealthy out of his art, though he always said that making a profit was never his primary motivation. He illustrated a number of books like the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, some of Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. He produced illustrations for that as well. He had a torrid affair with his Greek model, and in the 1870s he was being savaged in the press, so he became quite depressed, became rather reclusive for a while. But anyway, towards the end of his life he was knighted, became a grand old man of art. Used to like to play bowls in this front garden. So that's just a little bit about Edward Burne-Jones, and here we are in Kensington Square. What a magnificent square it is to live in. And they're all a bit individual, these houses, not all built at the same time. The brickwork's quite different. Lovely view there. Only if you live here and you're a key holder can you access that square. There is one weekend in June when all these squares, which are usually shut, are open to the public. You have to pay a few pounds to get in, because I remember people I worked for were renting a flat overlooking a similar square, and if you lived there you also had to pay a supplement to get in, like a couple of £100 a year to be allowed to be a key holder. Being a tenant was not enough. I thought they're getting £200 from each of these flats. How many flats are we looking onto a square of this size? I mean, you do the maths, they'd be making like £30,000 for the upkeep of that garden. It doesn't take one full-time gardener to look after a garden that size. Anyway, Kensington Square, what a fabulous spot. We've got Haythrop College over there, as in this sort of independent humanities university. Who was it? John Stuart Mill lived directly opposite. There's a Catholic convent close by. Just trying to think, around the corner, T.S. Eliot, the American poet, resided. Is there anything else? So Kensington is just a magnificent but very pricey area, very close to Kensington Palace. Okay, so I'll switch it off now. So please follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe, and thank you so much for donations on PayPal, on Patreon, and so forth. Choose me for lessons in history, in English literature, in politics, religious studies, geography, French, and law, and I can be your tour guide in London. Moreover, I help people edit their essays, dissertations, theses, and so forth. I write articles for all sorts of journalists. You know what you want me. Toodaloo.